From Indiana.
Come here this evening in a few moments.
Senators in a quorum call.
Would you please lift the quorum call?
Without objection.
Thank you. Over the next couple hours, we're going to have another CR vote, and we're going to get some votes on amendments. When I came to the Senate 3 years ago, a little over that, one of my main goals, I always respected the senator from Oklahoma, Dr. Tom Coburn. First saw him when he was actually on one of the shows talking about the same subject that I harp on all the time. The difference is, by standards of indebtedness, we had no real worries other than he was one that could see into the future. I come from the world of running a business, was on a school board, state legislature. You couldn't get by with what we get by with here. You had a budgeting process when I was a state legislator. You took it through committees. You brought in witnesses. You fleshed it out. Maybe you didn't need more money. Generally, even at the State House, they'd ask for more. It wasn't necessarily the case. You did the hard work, rolling up your sleeves, which Hoosiers appreciated. You know what it's given us back in the state of Indiana? The highest credit rating you can have as a state. It's given us rainy day funds. When COVID came along, we could have gotten by without a dollar from the federal government. That's what happens when you live your everyday life with responsibility, just like every American has to, just like you have to do in any other level of government. And think about running a business. Imagine, up until the recent spending spree, we were only borrowing roughly 23% of every dollar that we spend here. And this isn't on tangible investments. This is on consumption. There's nothing to show for it. A lot of the things we do, a lot of the things that people look to us to do, we need. But we're doing a disservice to our kids and our grandkids by the way who we're actually borrowing the money from when we run the biggest business in the world by the seat of its pants. I'm going to tell you just generally how this all plays out. 4.5 years, we're going to completely go through the Medicare Trust Fund. And by the way, health care expenses, based upon a broken health care industry that is not transparent, does not deliver the consumer good value, something that all of us that own businesses other than a health care business have to grapple with every year. They need to reform themselves, and that would bring Medicare and Medicaid into where it wasn't costing us so much. But still then, even if you saved there, we'd probably find a way to spend the savings. We're currently basically the only reserve currency. That's what keeps our interest rates so low. Historically, they've been 3 to 4 times what they are now. And you cannot run now probably close to $1.5 trillion deficits onto the $30 trillion we're already in debt and think that that is a good business plan for the biggest business in the world. So, especially for the folks on the other side of the aisle, but I'm going to say we've been complicit as Republicans. We roll over to give them what they want on domestic spending. They do the same on defense spending, which I think is probably the most important thing we do. And all of a sudden, everybody's happy. It's called bipartisan, but it's not honest to the American public. So here, we're going to do what we've been doing for years. We're going to vote on a CR later. But if we're ever going to get this place back in good shape, we got to have the political will, the discipline to get back to budgeting, to not spend beyond our means, because someday we may not be the reserve currency. And after we go through the Medicare Trust Fund, which will probably replenish by borrowing more money, Social Security depletes in about 11 years. I say that because nobody here talks about it, and it wouldn't be that difficult to solve it. In the real world, you make the tough decisions, you get through it, and you're better off for it when you get that behind you. So I'm going to leave it there this evening. I'm going to ask all of my colleagues to please vote on a balanced budget amendment that makes it so easy that it just says your resolution that you bring up each year. You've got to do it. You've got to do it on time. Has to balance the budget in 10 years. That even gives a lot more latitude than what I really thought was necessary. But I also want to make it to where every one of us can say yes to a balanced budget amendment like this because we owe it to our kids and our grandkids. I yield the floor.